Most of the internet you'll never see. What we scroll through every day, the websites, the news, the videos, that's just the surface. Beneath it lies something hidden. Encrypted servers, anonymous identities, and doors that were never meant to be open for the public. This is the dark web. And while it's known for illegal activities, weapon sales, and stolen identities, that's not even close to the worst of it. Go deeper and you'll find forums dedicated to human experimentation, marketplaces for death, and videos that should never exist. And that's exactly what we are getting into today. And before we dive in, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel because the channel's goal is 1 million subscribers, so please subscribe to the channel. And without further ado, let's get into some horrifying dark web websites. Dark web organ trade rings. They call it a market, as if human bodies were inventory in a shop. Behind layers on the dark web and a veneer of legitimacy, the dark web organ trade runs on hospitals that won't ask questions, middlemen who smooth over the paperwork, and buyers desperate enough to risk the force of the law. The blatant objectification of humans into numbers allows heinous organ sales to flourish. On these forums, brokers anonymously list kidneys, livers, hearts, and other body parts, using Bitcoin to hide from the banks. The dark web essentially runs an auction house for human organs. Undercover journalists and agencies have confirmed that the illicit organ trade thrives online. These groups span the globe, connecting suffering refugees willing to do anything to survive with wealthy patients also willing to do anything to survive. This issue is further exacerbated by the legal retailers. For example, one Florida clinic, Active Science Parts International, actually lists human lungs for $40,000 and hearts for $85,000, all on the clear web. While they pretend to operate secretly, they all contribute to the same shady underground, often linking to hidden network brokers, effectively bridging to the dark web. Most of the actual trade happens on encrypted chat apps such as Telegram. Newsweek infiltrated some of these channels built around organ sales. One called Kidney Organ for Sale USA is run by a self-proclaimed California doctor who claims to have a network of 20 surgeons worldwide. For the satisfaction of the customers, he apparently uses machines to preserve organs for shipments and even boasted about the millions of dollars in cryptocurrency he made from these deals. Other groups have list price menus like they're a bougie restaurant, and another style themselves like a mall calling itself the largest shopping center for kidney, liver, bone marrow, and advertising entire transplant packages. The utter lack of respect for the poor humans selling their body in desperation is truly disgusting, but clearly these doctors lack empathy and have no qualms about exploiting the anguished. Newsweek found forum posts from sellers who lost everything. "I want to sell my kidney because I need money," explaining, "When you are dying due to hunger, everything is legal." One of the most chilling examples is of Fabian Hildenbrand, a German man who came so close to becoming a part of this horror. Hildenbrand was an apprentice graphic designer, struggling to pay the bills and support his girlfriend at the same time. Exhausted and feeling cornered by life, he desperately needed to find a way out of it. So he turned to the dark web. Initially, he just browsed randomly. He found normal sites, privacy enthusiasts and programmers. Then he hit the dark side. human trafficking, organ sales, and hitmen. He thought they were fake until he began to realize the harsh reality. Reaching a breaking point, he actually offered to sell one of his own kidneys and posted an ad on one of the many sites advertising medical exchanges. Within days, he received an offer from a middleman. He offered him 90,000 euros, life-changing money for him. It looked like the answer to him. But the more he spoke to him, the more he grew wary. The man refused to reveal any identity and insisted on total secrecy. Eventually, he shook himself off. He stopped replying to the kidney buyer and grounded himself again, thanks to support from his friends and family. The underground organ trade is a massive industry. Experts estimate that over $1 billion of revenue is generated annually. Even in poorer countries, organs can fetch thousands of dollars, which is life-changing money for some. Despite the scale of the issue, catching these traders is notoriously difficult. Advertising transplants is obviously illegal, but as you should know by now, policing the entire internet is hard. They operate in thousands of channels, and just like the Silk Road and all the other drug markets on the dark web, when police take one down, another pops up in its place. To avoid detection, traffickers on the dark web use bizarre codes. Chat groups have rules. No direct mention of transplant or organ is allowed. Instead, they use hints and symbols. For example, one group used color-coded heart emojis in place of words. Furthermore, law enforcement is overwhelmingly focused on terrorism and narcotics, so organ rings often slip under the radar. A number of initiatives target this underground economy, such as tip lines specifically for organ trafficking. Some tech firms are developing crawlers to comb onion sites for phrases like kidney for sale. The darknet organ rings show how technology can turn human despair into currency. The people selling their organs are rarely criminals. Usually they're victims of poverty, war, and hopelessness. Behind those words are parents trying to feed their children, refugees trying to escape, or students drowning in debt. The horror isn't only in the surgeries, it's in the quiet normalization of it. The dark web has erased the line between humanity and currency. We think of the internet as a tool for good, something for connection, learning, and fun. And it mostly is. It has helped countless people to do countless things, and without it, the world would be a very different place. But every invention casts a shadow. The dark web is that shadow. Anonymity is a right of the people, but here it is used as a sanctuary for the unspeakable. It's not the technology that's horrifying, it's the people using it. For every victim identified, there are 100 more that vanish without a trace. Somewhere, someone is logged on, scrolling through horrors that should not exist. And most of us will never see it, and that's for the best. Because when you see things that the light doesn't touch, you never really come back. Hans the Sting. If you remember, in one of my old videos, I covered Alphabay, which was basically a drug-selling website, and its downfall, in quite some detail. In the end, the FBI dismantled it completely, but what many don't know is that there was more to this masterfully executed trap than just a simple takedown. Just a single month prior to Alphabay's demise, Dutch investigators seized a leading Tor-based drug bazaar known as Hansa Market. Most importantly, it was done in complete silence. It came from a single tip, A security company's researchers believe that they found a Hansa server in a data center in the Netherlands. Normally, the site was protected by Tor, which is the dark web, which would make it almost impossible to trace, but this was a development server, one where they would test new updates before publishing it to the users. It was exposed to the public internet and the Dutch police latched onto it. Immediately, they gained access and installed network monitoring equipment, which let them spy on every message sent. They found that there was another server at the same location that ran the live site, and another pair in another data center, all three protected by Tor. Still, even with a copy of the entire hard drive, including reports of every transaction and message, Hansa should have been safe. All of the admins and visitors used pseudonyms, obviously, and they couldn't track IP addresses normally, as it was all routed through the Tor network. But there's a great quote from the IRA. "We have to be lucky once. You have to be lucky always." And the Dutch got lucky. After going through the contents, they found an incredible slip-up. There were IRC chat logs between the founders. IRC is an antiquated messaging protocol made in the late 80s that isn't used much anymore. More importantly, it wasn't encrypted, and they could read the conversation, which went back years. As you could guess by now, it included both of their full names and even one of their home addresses. The pair were actually already under German police's radar for a much lesser crime, however. They were being investigated for the creation of LOL, a site selling pirated ebooks and audiobooks. This provided a brilliant opportunity for the Dutch. They could use the existing investigation for cover, letting the Germans take suspects for ebook piracy and take over Hansa, all without anybody knowing. Unfortunately, somehow the admins noticed something suspicious and moved their servers' locations. Still, the Dutch did not give up. For months, they examined the evidence, looking for any clues. Their lucky break came when they found out that the admin had made a Bitcoin payment using an address that had been in those IRC chat logs. Using advanced blockchain analysis, they traced the recipient to another hosting company in Lithuania. Fortunately, both of them had a mutual legal assistance treaty, so it was short work for them to gain access. While all of this was happening, the FBI was also working hard, hell-bent on taking down Alphabet. When it eventually went dark, the drug traffickers panicked. This was their business, and they needed a new place to sell. If you couldn't figure it out by now, they would go to another marketplace, one which was already well established and soon to be in Dutch police control. With extremely precise timing, the German police raided the two men and took their hard drives, unencrypted. Meanwhile, the Dutch immediately began the migration of all of Hansa's data to a new set of police hardware. Now they were in complete control. The users, oblivious. They kept logging in and kept trading, all while handing over their data to Dutch authorities. Meanwhile, the Dutch rewrote the site to betray even the most careful criminals, such as changing the passwords into being stored as plain text, not encrypted hashes. Basically, they read a book on information security and did the exact opposite. All communications were logged, the encrypt button was now a placebo, even the metadata in the images, such as the hidden location tags, was also stored. In a stroke of genius, Dutch agents staged a fake glitch that supposedly deleted Hansa's image database, so that the sellers would upload new photos that pinpointed exactly where they were, whereas before, all of the metadata was removed, so they were useless. In the most daring move yet, they offered sellers a file that served as a backup key to their site so they could recover their precious Bitcoin even in the case of a site shutdown. This existed even before the police takeover, but now it was replaced with a malicious Excel file. When the seller opened it, their device would connect a URL that logged their IP. 64 sellers fell for it. These guys stole more data than Facebook does. Now, that's impressive. And for legal reasons, that's a joke and alleged. Within days of the shutdown, Hansa's user registrations went up by 8 times as suppliers and buyers tried to reach out to each other again. And all of it was recorded. Hilariously, people were very satisfied by the level of service at Hansa, which was even better at the hands of the Dutch according to them. It went on for 4 more weeks, remaining fully functional, with the exception of which the police deemed too deadly. All other illicit goods, any drug you can think of, continued to flow freely throughout the site. The police weren't very conflicted about this, saying that it would have taken place anyway, just that they wouldn't know about it. Approximately 27,000 illegal deals occurred during surveillance, all painstakingly logged. And finally, after roughly 4 weeks, the sting was reaching its end. Hansa was abruptly unplugged from the internet and replaced by a seizure banner, taunting the community. We trace people who are active at dark markets. Are you one of them? Then you have our attention. In total, authorities claimed that they had harvested data from over 420,000 transactions, including about 10,000 real postal addresses of buyers, which they later shared with Europol and US investigators. Dozens of vendors were arrested all over Europe and North America, and the Dutch seized over 1,200 bitcoins from Hansa's escrow by exploiting their own code. And also, 1,200 bitcoins is worth about $132 million today. This sweep was just one piece of Operation Bayonet, a coordinated global effort designed to show the dark web drug lords that they couldn't hide. Hundreds of other sites, just like Hansa and Alphabet, were also hit, sending shockwaves through the drug trafficking underworld. This operation was different. Before, like a Hydra's head, one site would be taken down and another would pop up in its place. A post-operation assessment noted that criminals fleeing Hansa actually did not simply resurface on another site. They were scared. Whether it was a teenager in Ohio looking for drugs or a lawyer in Germany hooked on booger sugar, they thought they were making an anonymous purchase. Instead, they'd just given their real identities to law enforcement. The message was clear. The police could find you anywhere. As Wired put it, the police used their position at the top of Europe's largest dark web market to pull off increasingly aggressive surveillance. The dark web was not a safe haven anymore. Operation Playpen. The Hansa sting proved that even the most secure criminal networks could be dismantled from the inside. But as one operation ended, another began, and one far more disturbing. Whereas Hansa was built on drug trafficking and stolen identities, this one was much, much worse. Based on a tip from the Europol partner, in early 2015, the FBI stumbled upon Playpen, a vile exploitation site buried deep within the dark web. Hidden behind layers and layers of encryption, the site hosted images and videos depicting crimes too vile to name committed by the most abominable people on Earth. The administrator, Stephen W. Chase, was a 58-year-old from Florida who operated the site from his home computer. They uncovered thousands of, and I have to say this acronym because unless I don't, this video will be taken down and you guys won't even see it, but they uncovered thousands of cheese pizza pictures and videos, and evidence of him moderating the site through server logs. At its peak, Playpen had more than, get this, 215,000 registered accounts and hosted 23,000 cheese pizza posts. Insane. I mean, 215,000 registered accounts. That is just beyond disgusting and ridiculous. That is so many. And even more disturbing, the moderators would rank users based on contribution quality. In one of the most controversial decisions in FBI history, after finally seizing control, they did not shut it down. Yes, you heard that right. The FBI instead relocated to an FBI-controlled server in Virginia and ran it themselves for 2 weeks. For those 2 weeks, they were effectively one of the world's largest cheese pizza forums. Hiding in the suburban warehouse, agents continued to update Playpen's content and allowed the community to access it while running a sting operation. According to court documents, during those 13 days, Playpen's users accessed at least 48,000 images, 200 videos, and 13,000 illicit links. Each time anybody accessed the content, the FBI's hidden malware would log their identity. And what was truly horrifying was the true scale of it. In just those 2 weeks, nearly 100,000 unique individuals logged onto Playpen. They weren't just any random lurkers. Many were international criminals actively trading or hoarding the material. Within months, using the amassed evidence, over 200 people were charged as a direct result of the sting. Most of them didn't even have any other criminal activity. Many were parents, teachers, police officers, and IT workers. They looked like good people while hiding their sick habits from their public persona. Imagine how terrifying it would be if your next door neighbor, who seemed like a saint, had secretly been on the forum. Your child's school teacher, your boss, your employee. Operation Pacifier has drawn intense controversy. Despite the good ulterior motive, many were appalled by the fact that the FBI essentially became a top producer of cheese pizza for 2 weeks. Defense lawyers argued that the Bureau actually committed a more severe crime by distributing them than those who were arrested. Children were effectively further victimized by the more widespread distribution so that the other children could be identified. And so the question remains, where does decency end in the pursuit of justice? Furthermore, the government refused to reveal the hacking exploit they used, instead choosing to protect its methods. This actually led to some charges being dropped, and many offenders could have even escaped conviction due to this technicality, just so that their methods remain a secret. For example, while many of the defendants pled guilty, Jay McLeod did not. He was identified as a Playpen user and indicted for possession and receipt of cheese pizza. He was also a well-known teacher from Washington. For his defense, he fought for the disclosure of the exploit the FBI used. Basically, he said that if they didn't explain exactly how they managed to hack into the vulnerability on the Tor network, it would prevent their lawyers from mounting an effective defense against the charges put on Jay. Apparently, they thought that the government should not be able to impose a mandatory 5-year sentence while supposedly severely undermining his trial rights because the FBI did not want to reveal their exploit. The judge agreed to this and ordered the US government to hand over the source code and explain in detail how they circumvented the anonymity of Tor. The prosecutors, the government, was forced to choose between jeopardizing future investigations by revealing the code, which criminal coders could easily defend against them, or make sure this one person goes to jail. Obviously, the government agreed to dismiss this charge, and McCord walked away free. Because the government remains unwilling to disclose certain discovery related to the FBI's deployment of a network's investigative technique, NIT, as part of its investigation into the Playpen Cheese Pizza site, the government has no choice but to seek dismissal of the indictment. Federal prosecutor Annette Hayes wrote in the court filing on Friday. She noted that the DOJ's work to resist disclosing the NIT was part of an effort to balance the many competing interests that are at play when sensitive law enforcement technology becomes the subject of a request for criminal discovery. It is also important to note that this vulnerability was 0-day, meaning that no public patch existed for it. In fact, Mozilla even filed a brief asking that the government tell the company about it if it was also present in Firefox, as it would also endanger the users. The concern was that if the government kept hoarding it, criminals could also discover it on their own and maliciously exploit them. Mozilla has reason to believe that the exploit that was part of the complete NIT code that this court ordered the government to disclose to the defense involves a previously unknown and potentially still active vulnerability in its Firefox codebase. Mozilla wrote in its May submission to the court, "Absent great care, the security of millions of individuals using Mozilla's Firefox internet browser could be put at any risk by a premature disclosure of this vulnerability." I'm sure we would all agree that the more criminals caught, the better. But is it worth letting one sick individual walk away free on a technicality? Beyond this, the operation truly showed how many disgusting dark web users are among us. Once again, over 100,000 people logged on in just 2 weeks. There is an enormous global clientele for this filth. As one FBI memo said, it is a proof of a sickness that hides in plain sight. Agents obviously experienced severe trauma while reviewing the content, and several retired early, citing psychological stress. In the end, Operation Pacifier tore away the curtain, hiding the darkest corners of the dark web, revealing how deep sickness can run unchecked in anonymity. It was a glimpse into a world where morality, empathy, and respect for human dignity does not exist. Only human depravity. It shows that for every reason to believe in humanity, there is another reason not to. The shadow brokers. The dark web isn't just a marketplace for drugs, stolen data, or hitmen for hire pages. Hidden beneath the surface are places that have sparked chaos on a global scale. Secrets, leaks, and entire events that changed the internet and government forever. One of those events began with a mysterious hacker group who appeared out of nowhere and claimed they'd stolen classified cyber weapons from one of the world's most powerful intelligence agencies. Introducing the shadow brokers. They weren't some small-time scammers. No, they flipped the script. Instead of the police chasing them, they attacked the police. In August of 2016, they publicly announced on Tor, which is the dark web, that they had stolen hacking tools from the Equation Group, one of the most sophisticated hacking groups in the world. First identified by Kaspersky in 2015, they revealed that the group had been active since at least 2001, with more than 60 separate members. They document more than 500 malware infections by the group, affecting at least 42 countries, but mainly targeting Iran, Russia, Pakistan, Afghanistan, India, Syria, and Mali. Due to the extremely advanced techniques and intense level of secrecy, it has been linked to the American NSA, specifically its Tailored Access Operations Unit. For example, analysis of timestamps in the malware distributed by the Equation Group indicated that its creations worked overwhelmingly Monday to Friday in a time frame that corresponded to 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. workday in Eastern United States time. Furthermore, the NSA code words straight acid and straight shooter have been found in the malware. In short, these guys were serious. So it was a big deal when a previously unknown group suddenly claimed to have access to a box full of NSA cyber bombs. And they weren't lying either. They posted exploits first against major communication companies like Cisco and Juniper. According to a New York Times investigation, NSA staff were ordered to pull late-night shifts, manually scanning thousands of their own internal repositories in fear that more tools had escaped. In fact, one insider described it as our own Snowden moment, except we didn't even know who did it. In the months following, they ransomed the treasure trove of NSA cyber weapons. Initially, the group asked for a mind-boggling million bitcoins, worth over $110 billion today, and later reduced it to a modest sum of 10,000 bitcoins, still worth over $1 billion. Of course, back then, it was worth about 200 times less than that, but still. Obviously, the government refused to pay, as is standard practice for any ransom, so the group unleashed Pandora's box. They did try their hardest to get somebody to pay, in fact, going through 3 different business models: auction, later crowdfunding to release it, and then monthly subscriptions for leaks. Among the files was one of the most damaging exploits ever discovered. Eternal Blue was a vulnerability in the Microsoft Server Message Block protocol, and within weeks, it was weaponized into the infamous WannaCry ransomware. It spread across hospitals, banks, and factories all over the world, demanding Bitcoin. It was a massive world pandemic with hundreds of thousands of machines in 150 different countries being infected. Most famously, the exploit shut down the NHS, United Kingdom's National Healthcare Service, for a day. Another Eternal exploit, named Eternal Romance, would similarly enable the next major threat, the NotPetya ransomware, released in June 2017. NotPetya was a continuation of a previous ransomware, Petya, which was released a year prior and also used in a global cyber attack, specifically targeting Ukraine. It resulted in a $400 million loss in the country, stopping a third of its economy for 3 days. Basically, it harvests passwords, then uses other techniques to spread to other computers on the same networks, and uses those passwords to run code on them. Although it claims to be ransomware, it actually did not have any recovery system, so if it infected your computer, you might as well throw it away. A White House assessment estimated the total damages brought about by NotPetya to be more than $10 billion. In fact, it affected Ukraine so severely that it shut down parts of a nuclear power plant, as well as banks and metro systems. It is widely considered the most destructive cyber attack ever. Beyond Eternal Blue, the group revealed exploits that could hijack firewalls, routers, and PCs en masse. Tools used by elite government-employed geniuses were now in the hands of anybody with a working computer. The world's vulnerabilities, once covertly used for espionage, were now turned inward, empowering criminals and hostile states alike. They kept on leaking for another year, sporadically releasing more allegedly classified data. Thankfully, most of them either had already been patched or only affected older systems, but it still left a permanent scar in the books of many companies. Interestingly, Microsoft had patched some of the most important vulnerabilities just a month before the exploits were released, suggesting an NSA tip-off. So who were they, and what was their motive? Were they another Edward Snowden, intent on showing the world the disturbing overreach of the US government? Or did they just want to get rich quick? Of course, the first suspect was the US's biggest cyber threat, China. Most evidence points otherwise, however. When Barack Obama came into office, he took a very strong stance against China, threatening sanctions if any malicious Chinese threats were found. Furthermore, for the 18 months that the shadow brokers were posting, there was a significant drop in Chinese hacking. One of the zero-day exploits released by the shadow brokers was already in possession of a Chinese-affiliated hacking group, APT-31, 4 years before the leak, so it wouldn't make sense for them to suddenly release it now. It would also make it completely useless. Addressing the elephant in the room, money is probably not a motive either. China is incredibly rich, and a negligible part of it comes from cybercriminal activities. It simply wouldn't make sense for them to invest so much money into such an uncertain source of profit. Next up, we have North Korea. North Korea does have the capabilities as shown in the infamous Sony Pictures hack back in 2014. A comedy movie was about to release where a major plot point was assassinating Kim Jong-un, which obviously angered the North Korean ministry, who promised to launch a merciless countermeasure. A hacker group called the Guardians of Peace, along with the Lazarus group, then hacked Sony, stole a huge amount of data, and shut down the servers for days. If North Korea was capable of such an attack, they very well could have been behind the shadow brokers. WannaCry, another ransomware that affected basically the entire globe, was also created from the cache of exploits by the shadow brokers and shows similarities to the Lazarus group in its code. Kaspersky and Symantec, two well-known and trusted security companies, actually showed these similarities, which does provide some basis to this theory. However, it falls apart when you look at some of the posts by the shadow brokers on Steemit, a blockchain-based social media. There were two posts that made fun of North Korea, which in such a brutal dictatorship makes it extremely unlikely that the group making fun of North Korea originated from or was affiliated to North Korea. And then there's finally the insider theory. We already talked about the similarities between the Equation Group and the NSA unit, TAO. Linguistic analysis on the messages that the shadow brokers posted shows that all of them are written in bad English, though with entirely correct spelling, and suspicious grammatical errors in idioms that a low-skilled English speaker wouldn't know. It does sound like a native speaker trying to pretend to be a foreigner, if that makes sense. Furthermore, there are many comments on politics and events that they wouldn't know unless they followed American politics specifically very closely. Any Chinese-funded hacker group probably wouldn't have known or cared this much, and definitely wouldn't have posted that many American cultural references found in their posts. A former NSA employee, who wished to stay anonymous, claims that he and his colleagues don't believe that there was actually a hack. According to him, The stolen files and scripts were only accessible internally, connected to physical drives, not exposed to the internet at all. Most importantly, the NSA themselves suspected that an insider was behind the leaks based on 2 arrests. After the first post, the FBI received a warrant to search the home of Harold T. Martin III, an NSA contractor, and found terabytes of stolen material. According to them, there is no evidence that Martin leaked anything from the stolen data. Interestingly, gaming is popular among the TAO group, and the name Shadow Brokers could have come from the game Mass Effect. Nevertheless, their identity still remains unknown, and we may never know who was behind this group that caused so much damage. Whoever they were, their actions resulted in billions of dollars of damage across the world in some of the most devastating cyber attacks in the world. After surprising the world, they went silent in July of 2017. No more posts, no more leaks, and no more exploits. And it leaves us wondering, who was behind it and what was their motive? And alright guys, those were some horrifying dark web websites. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. The channel's goal is 1 million subscribers, and join our Patreon for early access to every single video and uncensored videos. Thank you so much for watching. Check out some other videos on the channel. It helps more than you know. And this was Snook, and I'll see you next time. Bye.